Hey, my name's Scott Bauer, and you're listening to Catholic versus Atheist.
So if you would just tell the listeners about yourself, who you are, what you believe, and why you believe it.
Well, there's nothing really to tell. I don't have any major background story as far as the philosophy or my belief, but the rest of my family, especially on my mother's side, is Roman Catholic, especially my auntie. She's staunchly Roman Catholic, and I've had a fair bit of exposure to that side of things. Having said that, I am baptized Presbyterian, but again, I was never actually practicing Presbyterian, so I was never really religious in a sense as I attended church on a regular basis. I had I'd say mundane upbringing, so it was not very steeped in anything spiritual or religious. It was quite ordinary, in fact. I went through a public schooling system, and of course science was a big part of that. But up until about 5 years ago, I was always open to the idea that there is a high power, or that there is a spiritual element or an afterlife or some sort of relevant supernatural entity that looks after us or began everything in the first instance. Since then, I've become aware, and was a bit of a shock to me, but I was unaware that there was a large portion of the American population which honestly believes that the Earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old, and that everything was brought into being instantaneously by a supernatural being. That type of belief is a bit of a rarity here in Australia. And as far as I understand it, the idea that everything had been brought into being 6,000 to 10,000 years ago is something uniquely American as far as the first world countries go. America has probably the least amount of scientific education through the public schooling system, and it was something of a surprise to know that that's essentially how many Americans believe the world came into being. I've probably spent an inordinate amount of time since then engaging with many of these people to find out how they came to their beliefs and why, and like even examining my own beliefs, how I came to re-examine what I believed. And as I said, up until then, I was very open to the idea that there could very well be a God. But now I find the reasons behind that just completely without foundation. You, for example, mentioned entropy, therefore God. And I guess my question was, how would you come to not only say that there is a sentient being that created everything, but that sentient being is your particular God of your particular religion?
The whole question of entropy leading to my God, there are two questions that we need to ask ourselves in order to decide what's going on here metaphysically. Is there a first cause or not? Now, if we assume that there is no first cause, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that this natural world that we live in has always been here. There's no beginning. Because there's no first cause, all there is an infinite chain of cause and effect going back forever. That means there's infinite time behind us. But because the heat death is approaching and it has not yet arrived, we know for a fact that there's only a finite amount of time behind us. Otherwise, the heat death would have already arrived. It hasn't arrived, therefore, there is a first cause. Now, the second question we need to ask, now that we've established that there is a first cause, is this: is that first cause natural or not? And if we assume that it is natural, then what does that mean?
There are quite a number of plausible models that give a beginning or the seeming beginning of this presented version of our universe that doesn't necessitate a first cause nor an eternal immortal being. And that's already been posited there are several models that do that, and many physicists have. So Sean Carroll, Lawrence Krauss, quite a number of people have spoken about this.
Yeah, but they all start from nothing, but their definition of nothing is not nothing. That's the problem with those models. If you look at them, if you go and actually look at what they're saying, they can say that it's nothing, but they're also saying that the reason that there's a quantum fluctuation is because there's a field there, right? A field is not nothing.
Sure, but there's also quite a plausible cause to say that time itself, so the temporal existence that we know in this universe, is a product of this universe.
Of course it is. That's a given. That's Catholic dogma right there. By definition, there is no before in time, but there is a logical prior. It's called an antecedent, and it's a logical prior. That's precisely why we posit a supernatural first cause, which is not natural, and that is infinite in every perfection. This is monotheism. It's the first step. All of the monotheistic religions acknowledge the first cause as their God. Now, The next step is into Christianity. And to make the step from monotheism into Christianity, you need to look at history. Who is Jesus Christ? Well, who do the Jews say he was? Who do the Muslims say he was? And it's very overwhelmingly clear that Jesus Christ is the Jewish Messiah, the promised Jewish Messiah. Then the third and final step is from generic Christianity to the fullness of Christian truth, which is the Roman Catholic Church. And for that, we need to look not at history. Well, we can look at history, that does help too, but we need to add in this other component of authority. What is the Bible? What is the canon of the Bible? Where did we get the Bible? How is it decided which books are in, which books are out? How do we know what the truth is? How do we have access to an infallible set of truths that will guide us reliably to God and to heaven? So that's a really, really quick overview. It's entropy, it's history, and it's authority. With those three steps, I went from solipsism to Roman Catholicism. So we can go back and examine any part of that interests you. I think as an atheist, the only thing we should be talking about is that first step, from atheism to monotheism. And all of the monotheistic religions acknowledge this supernatural first cause, which is perfectly simple and infinite in every perfection. Why? Because an effect cannot be greater than its cause. And if we look around this world, we do get hints and clues of perfections. We can talk about justice. We've never seen justice, but we talk about justice. We can talk about love. We've never seen love, but we talk about love. We haven't seen absolute life, but we still posit ultimate being. And so when we look at these perfections in this broken world and in this finite world, it points back to the attributes of the supernatural first cause, which is necessarily infinite in all these perfections, because only an infinite power can bring about something from nothing. And we need a source for all of the perfections that we see here in this finite world.
You're talking about an all-powerful sentient being that exists outside of time, space, and everything else like that. If you've got evidence for such a being, then by all means, I'm happy to do that.
We do have evidence. Everything is evidence for this God, because everything that we know about nature, everything that we see in nature is both spatial and temporal, and that includes quantum fields and these so-called nothings that are posited by atheist philosophers and scientists and mathematicians who want to, at all cost, avoid the supernatural first cause, right? And some of them may just be exploring these ideas for other reasons, not necessarily in an antagonism towards theism, right? But for whatever reason they're exploring these ideas, it doesn't really change the fact that everything in nature is spatio-temporal. We cannot separate the spatial aspect from the temporal aspect. If you're telling me there's a quantum field sitting there forever, sitting there for an infinite amount of time until there's a spontaneous quantum fluctuation, that is absurd, and we have to reject that. We have to go to a supernatural first cause. Logic demands it.
That's just exactly the same as saying your God will never come about, because
he doesn't come about. I agree with you. He doesn't come about.
That's right. So then why not just skip that step and we'll go straight to the universe starts itself?
We are forced by logic to say there must be a being who did not come about. That is exactly my whole point.
Well, there are quite a lot of cosmologists who don't agree with you that a universe cannot come about.
Well, they posit that it came about from something, and if they want to call that something nothing, that's just dishonest, you know?
Why? They have models that demonstrate that could be a possibility.
These people obviously are not philosophers if they think that a quantum field is nothing. And if they're positing a quantum field as the first cause, that's untenable philosophically. It just so happens that many scientists are not philosophers, and many of them are atheists and they're anti-theists, and they don't want to acknowledge that God exists, that the supernatural first cause exists.
A lot of these people grew up religious, and the only reason they fell out of religion is because they now have plausible reasons to explain the beginning of the universe. That doesn't necessitate a God. It's not that people don't want to believe in a God. In fact, if there is a God, it's the most important thing that we all do want to know. And there's no sense in denying that. So if there was a God, then it is in my best interest to know that he exists and to understand what he wants and how he wants it.
I would say, this is sort of a side note, but I would say that the barriers to submitting to God Almighty are not primarily intellectual. They are volitional, meaning that it's a question of the will. It's a question of what do you love? What are you attached to? What do you love? Do you love the short-term gains of your little favorite hobbies and sins? Or are you willing to detach yourself from the short-term gain in order to be religious. I think that there is a problem with attachment to sin. Now, speaking to an atheist, you're not going to understand that, obviously.
Well, that's right. I'm not even sure what sin is. But what if it's not your God that's the real? If there is a God, what if it's not your God? What if it's Allah and He wants us to pray to Him 5 times a day?
Allah is my God.
Well, are you praying to Him 5 times a day?
No, I pray to Him much more than that.
And do you acknowledge Muhammad as His last and final prophet?
No, of course not. I already walked you through why monotheism is truer than atheism, and Christianity is truer than the other monotheistic religions, and Catholicism is truer than the other forms of Christianity. I've walked you through very briefly that, but I think we should focus on the step to monotheism and this first cause.
We will get to that, but getting back to it, there are quite a number of plausible reasons where a sentient disembodied being is not required for the start of a universe.
It is required, absolutely. In every case, I guarantee you that every model that is proposed for the beginning of the universe from quote-unquote nothing, if you read the fine print in these books, Lawrence Krauss, for example, if you read, he admits that it's not really nothing. He admits that, okay? It's a popularized notion that's kicking around. People like the idea because they think that it can replace the supernatural first cause, but it can't, and Lawrence Krauss knows that. So go read the details. You'll find out that it's not creation out of nothing. It's not.
Sure. Yep, I know. So one of the links that I'll give you, there's a topic of black holes where there's an idea that a universe spawning other universes could do it through the mechanism of black holes.
Sure. Once you have a natural universe, it can do all kinds of weird and fantastic stuff. I have no argument against that. My argument is that a universe cannot create itself because for a universe to create itself, the universe must exist in order to create itself. And if you're honest, I mean, I'm not saying that you're being dishonest on purpose, but if you honestly search your heart and soul and think about this, meditate on it, you will admit that something cannot come from nothing. We need that supernatural first cause that is omnipotent and omniscient and infinite in every other perfection. So,
all right. But in our other conversations that we had before we got to this book today, we discussed some idiosyncrasies of quantum mechanics and the unusualness in which, like, we have the duality of light, for example, or particles. So the quantum universe, so to speak, has any number of unusual things that we don't understand. In fact, as Richard Feynman used to say, if you understand quantum mechanics, then you don't understand quantum mechanics. So we have this situation where paradoxical things can happen, and we know that they do happen. So you can't say that a universe can't create itself or that there has to be a first cause. It may very well be that there's a paradox that means we don't need a first cause, or that there wasn't one.
I have 2 things to say about that. Number one, quantum mechanics is a science, which means that it's producing predictable results. Independent studies will come up with the same patterns. Okay, it's statistically predictable results. It's a science. It's a hard science. And a lot of our technology, the technology that we're speaking on right now, depends on the reliability, the statistical reliability of quantum science. It is a science. It's not as magical as you might think it is. It is very reliable. So it's one of the most well-founded sciences in the hard sciences, actually, quantum mechanics. Even though it is paradoxical, it is fantastic and wonderful, and it does give you a sense of wonder, but that doesn't mean that it's somehow more magical than Newtonian mechanics.
And it doesn't mean that it's not either. And this is the point. Again, Sean Carroll speaks about how the universe could create itself based in those sciences. So based on those models, there is a plausible situation where a universe could create itself.
That's exactly my point. My second point, which is deadly to these models, is that quantum physics only happens in nature. We need to have the nature there for the quantum stuff to do its magic, right? So
how do you know?
Because nothing can't do anything. So there's always something. What they're calling nothing is always something, and it's always something that is spatial and temporal. That's why we know that there is a first cause, and we know that that first cause is not natural, that it's supernatural, and that's what everyone calls God. So there is no way to dance around or to hope and dream that there might be some sort of hidden corner in the new science that will justify atheism. There's absolutely nothing that could ever happen in science.
It's not so much to justify atheism. Like, we're talking about the reality of the universe. And again, the people who are in the best position to know how the universe may have started or come about don't agree with you.
Well, there are two approaches that they can take. One is scientific, which limits itself by definition to the natural world of matter, energy, and space-time. So they can limit themselves to speaking as scientists, or they can speculate and they can become philosophers, and then their atheism can shine through, or their agnosticism can shine through in their speculative philosophizing. But if they're speaking as scientists, you and I agree that they're limiting themselves to talking about the configurations, no matter how wonderful, the configurations of matter, energy distributed throughout space-time. That's all that they can talk about. So if they go beyond that, they are speaking not as scientists, they are speaking as philosophers, and they're speculating, and they may be good at it, or they may be very, very poor philosophers. And the atheist philosophers that I've read have never had anything to offer that makes any sense whatsoever in terms of the first cause.
But again, I'm going to go with the experts on this.
But are you going with the experts as philosophers or as scientists?
As philosophers, because, as you say, as I said before, these are just ideas. These are untestable ideas, but they are based in the mathematical models that they currently use and work.
Yeah, I have no doubt that the models work. I have no doubt. They're wonderful models. They're very sophisticated and elegant and beautiful, but they don't start with nothing. They start with quantum fields, or they start with something. They always start with something. I guarantee you that.
So with the monotheism, is it your opinion, belief, whatever, that monotheism is, so there's only one God, there's no other gods?
It's not my opinion. This is reality, because if some other God came along and said, well, I'm God, then we just need to compare that candidate with the infinite perfections of the one true God. And if the candidate differs in any way, then he's not God. And if he's identical in all the infinite perfections, then this candidate and my God are not two, but one. They are one. They are identical. So when it comes to other religions that are not monotheistic, you'll find that they're all either pantheistic or solipsistic or monistic. And what that basically, all of those things translate into is everyone goes to heaven. The only reality is God. Separation is an illusion. Maya, all these things that separate us apparently are just illusions that will fade away. Eventually we will find ourselves back into this grand unity, which is God. Everyone makes it to heaven. There's no basis for morality whatsoever. And basically the only reality is God. So there aren't that many worldviews really when you get down to it. There's monotheism, where there's heaven and hell. There's pantheism, where there's only God and heaven. And then there's atheism and nihilism and different things like that, which sort of just say no to the reality of God, the reality of heaven, and they say no to the reality of hell. So I see it very simply that there are really only three categories of religion. I consider atheism a religion, because atheists believe, without any warrant whatsoever, they believe in the real world, the material world. There's absolutely no scientific test we could devise that would ever verify that our alleged sense perceptions actually correspond to a real world, because those experiments would all necessarily depend on those alleged sense perceptions. So there is belief required to be an atheist, unless you are a hard solipsist or something like that.
So, but we literally only have our senses to experience the world.
Or do we?
Well,
do we have our senses?
How else would you experience the world?
The reason you think there's a world is because you think you have sense perceptions, right?
Mm-hmm. But the only thing I have to experience the world is my senses.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have much choice. I mean, you could either...
That's it, we don't have a choice.
No, you do have a choice, but it's not much of a choice. I mean, it's either consider yourself to be self-existent, that you are God, or you can just shrug your shoulders and say, well, I cannot be the source of my own existence, therefore God is God. And so I'm going to submit to his will, and I'm going to try to know him and to love him and to serve him in this life so I can be happy with him forever in the next. Those are really the only two options.
But why do we have to be gods in the first place? Why can't we just be beings?
Because of the bare fact of existence. You don't know that you can trust your senses, right? But you cannot deny, even though you can deny your senses, you cannot deny that you exist, because when you deny that you exist, you're affirming that you exist. Therefore, you're faced with this one bald fact of your existence. So you have to ask yourself, am I the source of my own existence or not? If I am, then I've got nothing to worry about because I'm God. And if I'm not, then that being who is this raw and eternal existence, that being is God. He created me. There's no third option.
What are my parents?
Your parents are finite creatures, if they exist. But when you're confronted with the reality of existence as existence, you know intuitively and immediately that existence is not a temporary thing. Being and life are not a temporary thing. You probably, as an atheist, you probably have this picture of the universe as a cold, dead universe, and then molecules randomly collided and eventually life formed. So life came from non-life. And then eventually with the heat death of this universe, you're going to see another cold, dead universe. And if you look at that sandwich of life, the pieces of bread are a cold, dead universe. And there's a very, very, very thin slice of meat in there, which is full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. It's a completely amoral worldview where there's absolutely nothing. And this brings me to another point, which I'd like to discuss with you, if you don't mind, which is free will. Do you accept free will or not?
So I'm undecided. But before we go, because I still have points I want to cover on the 3 points that you brought up. Just a quick on the monotheism. So the history that we have for civilization, as far back as we can determine, starts with the Egyptian pantheon of gods. So the Egyptian gods gave way to what would eventually become the Greek and the Roman gods, and then also to the Hindu gods, and then also the Norse gods. So they all share the parallels and many of the stories which became specific to the area that they diverged to before Zoroastrianism came about, and then your Judaism and Christianity and everything. So the monotheist, Zoroastrian essentially was the first monotheistic religion, and then the Judaism, and then of course you have Catholicism or Christianity, let's say, and then of course Islam, and then the unusual ones like Mormonism and so on. So you have a string of like a pantheon of gods, which even in some aspects. So even if you were to go back through the first, like true Genesis and all the rest of it, where God would say, part of the Ten Commandments, he speaks about you won't have any other gods before me, and even talks about battles with other gods like Baal and all the rest of it. So how is it that there could only be one God if all these other gods have somehow come? Like if you were in the age where God was regularly seen and regularly acted, how is it that people could believe in other gods?
Yeah, I've already explained to you the sort of philosophical explanation of how there can only be one true God. And the other component of my answer is that I see history obviously a lot differently than you do. I see you starting at some arbitrary midpoint where everyone's already confused and worshiping demons and multiple gods and ancestors and heroes and legends and all this sort of mythology and stuff like that. That's fine. But if we go back further, my understanding of history, even though it's not history in the sense of being recorded history, the basic idea is that God created us, we fell from grace, and then things went to pot. You know what I mean? So the Catholic understanding is that there was, first of all, monotheism, and then the fall, and then came the confusion, and all the sin was just propagating confusion, and even confusion in languages with the Tower of Babel and all these sorts of things.
But do you believe that the Tower of Babel was a real thing?
It doesn't matter to me because the church does not oblige me to take many passages of the Bible seriously in terms of literal imagery. It needs to have literally happened like that. For example, with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, there are only a few doctrines in there that we have to say yes to, but all the colorful stuff, we don't have to believe one way or the other. Does it matter if Satan took the form of a serpent and if it was a tree with literal fruit and the guy's name was Adam and the girl's name was Eve? None of that is dogmatically imposed on me. The only thing I need to know is that God is real, Satan is a fallen angel, he is real, that there is one biological human first pair, this first couple. We need to know that that is a fact. If a scientist can prove that we stem from more than one couple, one human pair, then I abandon Jesus Christ. It's a false religion. Christianity is a false religion.
I'll get you the link. We've done studies on it already. So mitochondrial Eve is 160,000 years in our past, and biological Adam, a Y chromosome Adam, was some 250 or thereabouts thousand years ago. I will find that out because that study has already been done.
It's called polygenism. If polygenism is true and monogenism is false, then Christianity is a false religion. Full stop. There is absolutely no way for Christianity to continue if it becomes known reliably that polygenism is the case. Now, are you going to be able to convince me of that? I doubt it, but send me the links for sure. It's a deal breaker. It's a deal breaker for me. If we do not descend from one human pair, it's game over for Christianity.
Well, as you know, I don't know how much you know about evolution, but it's population genetics. There's no individuals. If you had individuals, case in point, cheetahs, they came from what seemed to be either two mating pairs, only two surviving mating pairs bottleneck, or the same, like up to 6 pairs from the same family. So that genetic bottleneck means that pretty much every cheetah can act as an organ donor for every other cheetah that's alive now. And this was an event that happened less than 30,000 years ago. So the genetic makeup of the cheetahs is so narrow because of this one bottleneck that happened some 30 odd years ago, that there's no discernible difference in their DNA. I'll get you that link as well.
Yeah, give me all the links for sure. I just wanted to mention that when I didn't include it in the interview because Aron just laughed it off and he didn't bite when I gave him the bait, but I basically gave him the challenge. I said, if you can prove that polygenism is true, I'll leave Christianity. And he said, well, he said, that's stupid. He said, no one believes in polygenism. It's completely obsolete. And monogenism is so firmly established, nothing could possibly disprove monogenism. We all come from one human pair. That's what Aron Ra said. He seems to be something of an expert in this field.
Yeah, I'd take him as an expert as well.
So he may have settled that issue for us, but you can still send me the links.
Yep, sure.
I like your little frog logo.
Thanks. That's a chilled out frog, and that's exactly how I feel. I want to cruise through life. And yeah, I don't like letting things get to me, and I kind of do things in my spare time. So I'm actually a Taekwondo master as well.
No way.
Yeah, serious. And I've also competed quite often on the international scene. So I've been several time world champion.
No way.
Yeah, and I've been a champion of champions as well. But I've achieved a lot in my own personal life. I've got a great job. I've got a great career, I should say. I have the most beautiful kids, and even now I have the family to savor, and I intend to do that, So like I've achieved, if I was to die today, I'd be very happy. I'd be chuffed that I've achieved what I've been able to achieve and gone to places and seen the things I've done and been, So
wow, that's amazing. Can you just tell me some of your favorite mixed martial artists, like George St. Pierre, maybe like some of the Taekwondo guys? Can you just talk about some of your favorites, please?
I tend not to follow too much in the martial arts scene because, like I say, I've spent my time in that zone, and I've achieved the many things that I have achieved, and now I'm living life more for the family. So I've spent time covering on that. Having said that, though, like the General Che was a historical figure in the world of Taekwondo. He was the founder of one of the original organization that brought the Taekwondo into existence.
In what country?
In Korea, actually, South Korea. But he wanted to use Taekwondo as an agent to unify the two Koreas again. And that was one of his lifelong dreams. He passed away not having realized that dream, but there are quite a number of us that are carrying on that wish, like we're working to that endeavor. So
were you moved by some of the recent attempts?
There has been a couple of recent attempts, and of all the things that have happened, there has been a coming together of the Koreas at some of the martial arts games and even the World Championships. So they have actually been able to come together and put many of their differences aside. Because as you know, they are technically still at war. They're just in an armistice at the moment. 56-year-long armistice. But yeah, so there's still quite a lot of ground that needs to be covered. But by the same token, Taekwondo is something that has defined the Korea as a people.
Can you tell me sort of a rival that you were proud to defeat, to take one of your championship belts, maybe one of the ones you're most proud of? Can you just talk a little bit about that moment?
Sure. I was one of the first gold medalists for my version of Taekwondo back in 2001. I brought home the gold medal in power breaking, which is quite a specific form of competition. So that was actually in Italy. We did that World Championships. In Greece, in 2003, the very next World Championships, there was a gentleman from Norway who took that title, and I only managed a bronze at that exercise. So I shared the bronze with Canada at the time, surprisingly enough. And North Korea won the silver. Then we hosted the World Championships in 2005 here in Australia, and that's where I was able to win my medal back.
Ah.
So that was my first retirement. I've retired a couple of times now, and believe it or not, I'm actually competing again at the Veterans Division for World Championships in Melbourne, Australia. So they're hosting it here for another organisation, and I'm entering that competition. So
wow.
With any luck, I'll be able to do it all over again. But yes, I did come out of retirement and became a triple world championship in 2013 in the Veterans Division as well. And then did an injury 3 weeks out from the 2015 Worlds as well. So I spent 2 years recovering from that with knee reconstruction. And of course, now I'm getting back into it again.
Are there weight classes? And if so, which weight classes are you champion in?
There are weight classes. I was in the hyperweight, so that's literally 80 kilos and over. Now, of course, that's based on Asian weight divisions. So us Europeans and Anglo-Saxons, 90% of us are in the hyperweight. So it was a very large division. So I had to do a lot of rounds to get to where I was. So we managed to do that. And of course, yes, training to do it all over again.
So you don't need to cut weight.
No. It would be nice if I wasn't quite as plump as I am right now, but yeah, it's a non-issue.
Do you like food?
I do. It's a very unfortunate side effect, but I do. My wife especially loves eating out, so we do quite a lot of dining, fine dining, and probably more than I really should. As far as my training is concerned, she's not very happy about that. It's great that I have to pay someone to hate me, but yeah, she hates me enough to make me hurt, and she makes me hurt often.
So I do, at the end of my interviews, I ask my guests to give a little closing thought, just a little positive message from your own perspective, because we all have unique experience and unique history. So just to wrap up the show, what do you think you might be able to say to someone that might be out there listening now?
Well, I guess it might be a bit pertinent because I just lost my uncle the past couple of days, and that was actually strongly on my Roman Catholic family side. So, of course, all this has been brought to the fore. But, the only thing we have is each other. Like, we have our family, we have our friends, and to spend time being filthy at other people for ideas that they may have or for a lack of understanding or for any other number of things is detrimental to all of us. It's not something that you should allow to fester. Like, we need to be cognizant of our differences, and by the same token, supporting in every other way. We are still human. We're the one human race, and we should be supporting each other exactly as that.
If you like your worldview, if you think it's swell, if you've got some questions, ask me and I'll tell. All you got to do is ask. All you got to do is ask.